Well, after the abduction that I had in 1989, which to all intents and purposes have been, for me, embarrassing, and I just couldn't seem to put the pieces together. Do I understand it now? Have I put those pieces together now with another researcher did? But it's interesting because I had the only time in my life, people call it a download. I remembered I was at work and all of a sudden it was as if my mind had opened. I never would have believed it. This is the thing until you have been touched by the singularity. But I had this opening and it was to do with the Greys. And I'm not saying that my theory is correct. We have to be open to certain models of conjecture, but I wondered how it was that the Greys were able to abduct an individual. And my understanding is that if I use this very loosely, quote unquote, the spiritual aspect, where there are two composites of us, well, three really. One is spirit, one is soul, one is the vehicle. And I believe that the part that makes us what we are, the Greys can retract from us. So in instances of abductions, if someone is when they're going through the process of abduction and anyone's around them, like a partner or a wife or whoever, they are knocked out. And the person doesn't really know how they get from A to B. I understood what happened with me because I was going through solid material. So I considered perhaps that the Greys are able to retract the real essence of the blueprint of what you are into their domain, into their timeless, spaceless domain. Now, when you look at near-death experiences, if someone is dying and then they report that they pass over to the other side, they are in a state of eternity. There is no time. They communicate with their loved ones or spiritual masters through a process of telepathy. And if the physical body that they left behind, and I must mention this again, is in decay or there is severe illness, terminal illness, on a lot of cases, you'll find that when that person returns back from their empirical state of longevity, of eternity, when they return back to the body and they awaken, they're normally healed. Now, when a person is abducted, it is possible that the Greys remove the real essence of you from your body. They take you into their domain where interaction is then possible, no different from the NDE interacting with loved ones on the other side. They have just merely passed from one state of vibrational link to another. So whatever the Greys do to you will invariably affect its physical counterpart because they're still attached. There's still an attachment. Now, the Greys are interesting. I kept thinking, and even from other researchers was suggesting here from their, if I use the word clients or their patients, as it were, that a lot of them were talking about some kind of hybridization program, hybrids as we all know them. Dr. David Jacobs, I've spoken to him at length with this many years ago. And it just seemed puzzling that you would have a species such as the Greys that could not replicate, so we understand they appeared as clones, are interested in hybridization. Now that's interesting because, you know, what was it? Why would a species that can't produce go into some kind of bioengineering where they're able to replicate life itself? And this poses the question. The Greys, I believe, it could be possible to suggest are outside the field of creation. Now, there are several hypotheses that we can take here. One of them is that, let's take an example. If we as a human species no longer began to reproduce, primarily reproduce, and we started to go into the process of cloning, replication, the big question is that my understanding is that there is some kind of soul connection or ultimate conscious connection that draws within the field beyond this level of reality, the other side, whatever you want to call it, and ingests within the incarnation process, within the embryonic formation of a child that comes into the womb. And in so doing, when the child goes through the birthing cycle, there is still an attachment from that child within the womb to its original source of origin, the other side. So this process of replication, of reproduction, is vital to our species. It makes us what we are. We are all individual, and I believe that we carry a spark of the divine as we go through that natural process of reproduction, of continuation. Now, the question is that if you are cloned, and you no longer go through any form of, reproduction, that it is basically replication, where is that spark coming from? So it's possible that the Greys could have counseled themselves out of their own creation, and in so doing have lost the real essence of what they had originally been. They don't understand about color. They don't understand about taste, of smell, of love, of time, all these attributes that make you and I and everyone else so unique within our material composition, our biological composition. And I believe when you're looking at them, they're like soulless. And I know that Nigel Kerner, the brilliant Nigel Kerner, must be credited for his research, absolutely, suggests that perhaps we are dealing with some kind of AI construct. Well, I understand that and I respect that completely and utterly. As researchers, I will always respect everyone's the way that they view this reality. But I don't feel that a piece of AI mechanism would truly understand the true nature or the essence of the soul, because you're talking about something that goes beyond biology, that goes even beyond the mechanical nature of whatever something's created by in terms of machinery. But we do agree that the Greys are looking for something. And when they look into you, they're not looking at you, they're looking into you. It's almost like they're trying to find something. And I believe that something is part of what we call the soul, the spirit, the real essence of what makes us tick. Now, interestingly here, I kept going back, and even I'm 55 now, and the experience I had was in 1989. That was when I was 20. So there was two things that occurred that were truly disturbing. And through all the research that we've done and all the research that you're doing, and you will do yourself, Michael, you never, ever, ever think that you are any lesser than anyone else, because every single person has their right to bring something new to the table. And through your brilliant mind, I believe that you yourself will be able to make parallels that's way out there. But two things happened to me. One of them was the intrusive investigation. And it was something that I can't find the words for. But you find this with a lot of people who have had the abduction. Even Barney Hill from the famous 1961 abduction of Betty and Barney in New Hampshire, when they were abducted. John G. Fuller wrote the book, The Interrupted Journey. Now, Kathy Marden, lovely friend, beautiful soul. She's been of great assistance and help. She was the niece of Betty and Barney, and they released information that Barney himself also had this uncomfortable and embarrassing procedure. And of course, the media cartel, of course, would take the mickey out of you. And I had someone say to me, they're taking the butt end of the jokes of you. Well, that's fine. But we know that through these types of investigation, it is to do with the secretion of fluids also within the human. And I remember there was one part to the experience where, when I was being ejected from the craft, as it were, or told to leave, before the last part where the noddy type character was there, they showed me the image of a tree, a huge tree, and I couldn't understand what the symbology was with the tree. I couldn't work it out. And of course, we go back to the tree of life, to the tree of knowledge. And so what these Greys are doing, I believe that they cannot have what we have, no matter what they do, no matter what type of experimentation. It's almost as if they've been trying to figure out what is it that makes us tick, and they, as blank canvases, cannot seem to understand that. So I believe that the way that they go about this is that they kind of like connect with individuals that are different, not unique, because we're all unique. Every one of us is unique. But because there is something different about the energy frequencies that's being emitted by the individual. And that's another part that we have to talk about, because it's very interesting. And I think the system that we serve is aware of this. And are they in coalition with these darker forces, these alternative forces, these interdimensional beings, ultra-terrestrial beings? Who knows? But I am rather suspicious myself, because our system now, if you go back into the 60s, the 70s were experimenting with remote viewing and extension of consciousness through military operations. And of course, the military, quite rightfully, would try to resource anything it could possible to advance its own technology, its own weapons divisions unit. So I believe that not the military guys, they're all sound guys, and the women as well. What wonderful souls. But those at the very top of the high of command that take their orders from those at the right of the top. So I believe that the system knows about this force, and that the whole idea of it being spacemen, and then of course placed into the X-Files and all sorts of things with the perfect image of the grey, and let's put it out there, let's merchandise it. And of course, this is where the non-transparency works absolutely beautifully within the system that we serve, because people will say, oh no, you've been watching the X-Files, or oh no, you know, you're mistaken, you know. So there is so much confusion. And if you start to, you know, part all of that, excuse my French, crap, that is kind of like piled on top of all of this, when you start peeling it away and looking at the rawness of what's going on, it tells us a different story entirely. So I believe that it's possible that the Greys are a genus that had fallen from grace. And this is a war, a silent war that's been going on for a very, very long time. Now, I do believe also that we have been created not by God, although we have a spark of that godliness energy, wherever that source is on the other side, but we had been created by gods that were no different from us, but they were kind of like more advanced, and we understand reptilian to a degree in nature. They were known as the Anunnaki, or better, the Archons. And when, even if I dare say this, and it's not just, ladies and gentlemen, Michael, the UFO subject we have to look into here, it starts to take you down other avenues, because you're like, well, hang on, when did this all start? It didn't start in the 1940s with the crashing of the craft in Roswell, or, you know, anything like that, you know, nothing like that. This has been going on for a very long time, but the way that our language translate this years ago was like, oh, there's arrows in the sky, or there's shields in the sky. But when you, for instance, look at the Bible, let's take the Bible, for instance, because that has a lot of really very strange occurrences happening in there. And I've always known for many long years that the version that we have is not the real version. And woe behold, we find out that it's not the original version, and it's been changed and altered. And there are a lot of books from the original authors that were all different. It wasn't all one author, they're all different authors. And when you go back here, you find, hang on a minute, these events that the Bible that we have today talk of are not quite the way that we've been led to believe. But what it does suggest is that there have been gods, quote unquote, known as the Anunnaki. And of course, there was interbreeding with certain creations that the Anunnaki or Archons had created before the model of the Adama or Adam was made with Eve. And so, you know, when you get involved with ufology, most people would just want to look at the nuts and bolts. Totally understandable. They just want to see the physical side to it. But when you start exploring into the non-physical elements, or the those areas of uncomfortable territory where there was a divide originally from one to the other, like life after death and UFOs in that box and cryptids in there and whatever, when you start joining the dots, you can see that there are connections to be made, uncomfortable connections to be made. So I believe, like Dr. Jack Valet, and I was very honored to have met the guy in the United States of America. I shook his hand. I gave him a letter, but I didn't get anything back because he's a busy man.
Yeah.
But I have to say to you, he's a cool guy. But I believe, like he, that this force has changed its face to suit what's in vogue. But you'll have people telling you, no, Philip, no, you're not listening to me. We are dealing with whatever species from whatever planet, and I know their high command and all the rest of it. So interestingly, when I had my experience in 1989, there had been reptilians, 3 of them there. And I have to say then I was so embarrassed to mention it. It was horrific. And there were some greys. And then I get people telling me, oh, it's because the greys are subservient to the reptilians. And I've even been told, some people have told me what their names are and their level of high command. Please give me a break. It's hard enough for us trying to deal with the reality of the phenomena without giving me a name and their high command, because even that won't do me any good. You fix me a meeting with them, I'll go and see them. I'll go and speak to them. That's not going to happen anytime soon. But the reptilians are interesting. And this is where it gets really cranky, because people are like, hang on just a minute, where do they fit in the equation? But if we go back into the past, you will find that the reptilians are very much prevalent. And if you look at all the churches and a lot of the gargoyles on them, and you'll see these dragons everywhere, the worship of the serpent. And some people have suggested, well, it's just literally a symbolism of the model of the DNA strands, of the double helix and all that type of thing. And I'm like, no, this is to do with the dragons. So, that's a very long-winded answer to your question, Michael.
Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link of the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers, behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else, and that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5.